This session is going to cover working on the cranks, pedals and bottom bracket. This is a 3-piece crank set. Still appears on many bikes, especially cheaper ones, and it requires some special tools to disassemble and assemble. We're also going to remove the chain wheels just to demonstrate that. For a start, we'll take the pedals off, and it's a lot easier to take the pedals off while the cranks are in the bike. Right hand pedal has a right hand thread. Got it. You'll notice I'm moving the cranks to take the pedal off rather than moving the spanner. It's just a bit easier. And I'll just do the last little bit by hand. These are cheap pedals, and you wouldn't work on these pedals. You wouldn't want to actually rebuild them, but the actual bearings feel good. It's a steel axle into an aluminium crank, and it can often pull some of the thread out when we take the pedal out. This particular one, the thread looks okay, and it looks okay on the pedal. Now the left hand pedal has a left hand thread, so it's just the opposite to what your instincts tell you. And oh no, this one's loose. And once again we pedal forward to take the pedals out, and we pedal backwards to put them in. And we have a look at the thread in the crank, and it looks good. Now we're going to take the cranks out, but we need to take the chain wheels off first. It's a lot easier to replace the chain wheels with the cranks on the bike because you've got a lot more leverage. What we'll do is just loosen these while they're on the bike. So I'll just loosen them now, and we'll actually replace the chain wheels later when we get the crank off. These crank arms are on a 4-sided tapered axle, and these here are just covers for aesthetic reasons. They don't actually do anything. But we'll take them out first. They're only in there quite loosely, so that's what that looks like there. Do the same on this side. These crank arms are held on by crank bolts, and in this case we have a spanner with 14 and 15mm ends. It's a special spanner with a big recess to get in. So once again I'm using the opposite crank arm to hold while I use the spanner on this side. So I'm using the full leverage both ways. And I just loosen that nut. And I'm using the crank arms once again to do the work rather than spinning the spanner around. That's all it looks like there. Same for this side, using a crank arm as the leverage. So this is almost a standard 3-piece crank puller. There are different threads. I think I have 6 different ones here. What we do, we screw the crank puller into the crank. It's most important we lock it in there. We don't just put it in finger tight, it has to be locked in with a spanner. Otherwise, as soon as we try and pull the crank off, it'll just pull the thread out of the crank. Once again I'm holding onto the crank using that leverage, and I wind the puller in. Sometimes these are really tight, but this one's not particularly, and it just comes off like that. So you've got a tapered 4-sided axle, which is the standard size for all the different brands, and a tapered crank arm. Take the puller out with the spanner. Same for the other side. crankset one. Now this is a standard cup and cone bottom bracket system. We have a lock ring and an adjustable cup. This is called a C-spanner or a hook spanner. You just put it on there and unlock it. And we undo the cup. Now it's got holes in it and we need a pin spanner. We can either use a fixed pin spanner like this one, which has 2 different pin distances, or we can use an adjustable one like this Park Tools one. The threads are really nice on this bike, so it's going to screw out really simply by hand. Whoever has assembled this bike has done a very good job. There's plenty of grease on the threads and it all looks like it's been done properly sometime in the past. So what we have there is a bearing cup with some caged ball bearings in there. Pull the axle out. We have a look at it, inspect it, wipe the grease off it. It was good to see that it was still nice and clean in there. It doesn't look like it's been wet. The grease hasn't been contaminated by water. It's worn, there's a wear line around the bearing surface, but the wear line is fairly even and there's no pitting in that side. And we check the other side. Inspect the other side. The wear line is not as even as the other side, but it's not pitted, so it's, for this quality of bike, that's perfectly acceptable to put back in. And now there's a plastic sleeve in there that stops water mainly from coming down through here into the bottom bracket. So it just protects the bearings, and even it's pretty clean in this case. Obviously hasn't been wet. Just have a look inside there, make sure there's no rust in there. This one's pretty good. Reach in and pull out the bearing from the other side. Usually we only take the right hand cup out, that is the drive side cup out, if we really have to. But normally we just clean it and have a look at it from here, and if you're satisfied that it's okay, you would just leave it there. But in this case we're going to take it out just to show how it's done. This is an English threaded bottom bracket shell, which means that the right hand cup has a left hand thread. If it was Italian threaded, like some racing bikes are, it would have a right hand thread. There's a special spanner for this bottom bracket, but you have to somehow lock the spanner on there because this should be in there so tight that it won't come out without the spanner slipping off. So we use this device to hold the spanner on. It goes in from the other side, put the spanner on, that just holds it on. If it's been put in properly, it would have been put in this way. So I'm actually going to hit the bike with a hammer. And that's loosened the cup. It's one of the few things you try to do when the customer's not around. So we unscrew it, which is left hand thread. Have a look at the threads, have a look at the cup. This whole bike as we're going through it is appearing like brand new. So I'm going to just clean that cup with a rag. have a better look inside. You can actually see whether there's any rust inside the frame, and this one's spotless.